Paul Foster-Bell.
Tēnā koe e te
Tēnā
mana
koe.
whakaua. Tēnā koutou katoa e ngā mema o te whare paramata o Aotearoa. Mr Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to take a call in this third reading debate on the Christian Churches New Zealand Property Trust Board Empowering Board Bill, a private bill which stands in the name of my friend and colleague, the Honourable Dr Nick Smith. Sir, this bill has been canvassed quite widely throughout the different stages that we've debated it and so far in this debate. And I will seek to make a few points during this call, but I want to first put on record my thanks for the indulgence of the House that was given for the previous matter, that is my RSA alcohol bill, to be moved to the top of the order paper ahead of this bill, where it would usually have sat as a private bill ahead of members' orders of the day. So I would like to put on record my thanks for the House for that. Sir, this bill, as was put in the words of my colleague, the Honourable Chester Borrows, is dealing with an organisation that has become asset-rich but needs to focus on its activity. And there are many examples of these sorts of organisations that we could look at. I have the pleasure of representing the Pacific region on the Executive Committee of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. And that is one example of an organisation which, unfortunately, for a few years at least, has devoted something like 70% of its resources to administration, to property, to clerical matters and to HR, and only 30% of its resource, of its subscriptions that it collects from its members into activity, into delivering programs on democratic good governance. So in a similar way, sir, over the course of time, the Christian Churches of New Zealand, formerly known as the Associated Churches of Christ, have developed this issue whereby they have buildings which may not be in the right place or necessarily the right size to accommodate their growing or changing membership numbers, and this asset is tying up a considerable amount of capital which could be devoted to their mission and to service and to providing the charitable services that they offer to their members, to their parishioners. So, sir, I'd like to refer to a member of the Christian Churches of New Zealand which is based in the area which I seek to represent as a National List MP, Wellington Central. So in Karori we have St Anselm's Union Church, which I think provides an excellent case study of why this legislation is necessary. St Anselm's Church is at the far end of Karori, actually on Makara Road as you head out to Makara Beach. It's named after St Anselm, a former Archbishop of Canterbury, who was actually born in Italy in the year 1033. At the age of 26, he moved to Normandy and accompanied William the Conqueror over on the Norman invasion of Britain, and he became the Archbishop at the age of 60. Uniquely, by popular acclaim, he was declared to be a doctor of the church and then a saint, rather than by an appointment process formally within the church hierarchy. So St Anselm's Union Church, named after St Anselm, is a small Christian community. And it's there to encourage, according to their mission statement, encourage the development of a dynamic and living Christian faith, to share their faith with others in the wider community and to work for peace and justice for all. And whether you are a person of faith or someone who is irreligious, I think we can actually admire the fact that they are seeking to work for peace and justice for all and to deliver a community service to people in their area. The Churches of Christ were traditionally, of course, a lay-led organisation, but St Anselm's is presided over by a minister, the Reverend Geraldine Coates. And I think it's also interesting, sir, that St Anselm's is one of the more liberal Christian communities that we have here in Wellington. For instance, in September 2014, they formally expressed their concerns from that congregation on a decision taken by the Presbyterian General Assembly, the stance in relation to whether people who were in relationships outside of marriage could serve as preachers or ministers. So St Anselm's certainly marked themselves out as one of the more liberal communities. The amenities that they offer the community are highly valued. For instance, there is a craft group which attracts a regular following. Their community hall is hired out to groups to offer a wide range of different social and hobby activities. Their main service takes place on a Sunday at 10 a.m, but they also have very interesting guest lectures, and I'd point to a series, or two series of guest lectures that were provided by Professor Lloyd Gehring, a member of the Order of New Zealand, so one of our 20 greatest living New Zealanders, and also, I believe, the only person to have been convicted in a heresy trial in a canon court here in New Zealand. And Professor Gehring offered some very interesting lectures. What We Owe Ancient Iran was one of them. So this was talking about the Zoroastrian religion and how that fed into modern Christianity. We also had What We Owe Ancient Iraq, talking about the laws of Hammurabi, the 12-based Sumerian numerical system. This is the ancient system, counting by 12s, which actually our system for measuring time, the calendar, our directions on a compass, much of our modern system of counting is derived from. And then there was an interesting series of lectures on the greening of Christianity, so the ecological morality, I suppose. These were allowing the parishioners at that church, but also wider members of the community who wanted to come in to listen to them, an opportunity to think more widely, to learn something new from a professor and one of our 20 greatest living New Zealanders. So I think we can all agree that was a very useful amenity that was offered to the community there. Sir, in their mission statement, St Anselm's point out that they seek to draw people into a caring Christian fellowship by providing meaningful worship, the study of the gospel, community activities, creche and children's programs. And I think the creche and children's programs, which are offered in both their kitchen area plus the hall, are highly valued by members of the community in Karori. And these are the sorts of activities that through this bill we are seeking to underpin by empowering the Property Trust Board of the Christian churches of New Zealand to be able to deliver services rather than focus on administration. And I would note that there is nothing in their mission statement that talks about the maintenance of property and rates and keeping the power switched on and all of those issues that one has with properties. Their mission statement outlines the activities that they are seeking to deliver to their people. So this bill supports them in that goal of giving individuals an opportunity for spiritual growth, rather than tying up the management and the administration of that church in dealing with property trusts which have become outdated. So, sir, this is a bill which has been through the committee. I am now on the Government Administration Committee, although I unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to sit in that committee whilst we heard the two submissions. There were only two submissions on this bill. One of the submissions supported the bill as it is. There was another submission calling for a sunset clause to be inserted, but on balance the committee on consideration decided that the sunset clause was not necessary. So why is this legislation needed? There are a couple of good reasons why we do need to introduce this. Firstly, there's been a name change. So what was the Churches of Christ New Zealand is now the Christian Churches New Zealand. They've changed their name, and the original enabling legislation, the Association Churches of Christ Church Property Act 1929, deals with the organisation as it was then named. There has been a change in name, and as we know from recent disclosures from Panama, the issues around trusts can be quite contentious. I don't think this is one of those issues. This is a trust that no one will have an objection to. It is a trust which seeks to underpin the church and the work it does, the valuable work it does. So I think the issue around the naming of the church and the renaming of the Associated Churches of Christ, that did need to be dealt with. Also, effectively bringing the churches under wider general charitable trust law. I think that is a positive. In a previous era, almost every organisation, every school, even some individuals wanted their own private piece of legislation. Rather than giving updated private legislation continually to organisations, I think it's actually better lawmaking to do, as we are doing here, and bringing this organisation under the auspices of having a charitable trust which is governed by general trust law rather than a unique and specific piece of legislation. There are also some doubts as to the board's ability to legally hold the properties that have been vested in it because of those name changes that relate to when the private bill was first enacted. So I think this is a very clear and good piece of legislation, and I commend it to the House.
Speaker.
Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.